I faced a lot of pushback. The more I became myself, the more people were like, you've changed so much. And you lose relationships in that journey. But what I always speak to my clients as well is like, just trust yourself, because the more you are yourself, the more you'll meet the people who will love you.
Welcome to Mindset Mastery with Julissa Edwards, the podcast dedicated to helping high performers unlock their true potential and cultivate a powerful mindset for success. I'm your host, Julissa Edwards, a mindset coach and advocate for healthy high performance. Join me on this transformative journey as we delve into strategies, insights, and inspiring conversations with experts and thriving high performers. Get ready to master your mindset, elevate your performance, and create a life of purpose and fulfillment. Let's dive in. Hello, welcome back. Today we have a beautiful guest, Catalina Montes. She is a somatic business coach and breathwork facilitator who helps women remember their power and embody their creativity so they may confidently lead the life and business that they came here to create. That bio could not be any more on point. Our episode today was completely about how we can continue to nurture this inner knowingness of self. How do we even begin that process? What does it actually mean to love ourselves? What does it look like to be committed to our inner growth so that whatever we put out in the world, as an entrepreneur, as a person, is truly aligned with our highest calling, and how that can evoke safety and happiness within, even when life, of course, gets very, very challenging. So it's a beautiful episode. Catalina is somebody who is just so wise and profound, and she has this very, very much grounding, calming energy. So without further ado, I know that you guys will thoroughly enjoy this episode. We welcome Catalina Montes. Okay, I'm so excited. Welcome, Catalina. I am like really, really, really in a joyful state because I know that our conversation is going to be so good today. Um, What I want, I think, the listeners to know most, well, first and foremost, we know each other through our business coach, and we were in masterminds before. We're now in a mastermind together again. And so I have the beautiful opportunity of being in close knit connection with Catalina again, which I am super excited about. And I think, girly, what I love about you most is that you are so, first of all, you're young. You're young. You began your business when you were 18, 19,
Yes, 18.
18, right? You now have a six-figure business, and your soul is so grounded. When I talk to you, when I'm in presence, alongside of you, it's very much like an old wise soul who's just very nurturing in her stillness. Like, you don't have to say much for people to feel your energy, and it's like, how is she so grounded and so wise at such a young age? So um that's what I want people to like, just to know and feel about you. And yeah, girly, I'm excited to have you here. And what message is coming out for you at this time to share with our audience?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. First of all, Julissa, it's also been a pleasure to watch you grow. And I love that you say that, I'm this old wise soul. I get that a lot. Like 90% of the people I meet tell me that. And it's so interesting because for a very long time, I saw that as like something that was wrong with me. Growing up as a little girl, as a teenager, people wanting to party and drink and do all these things. And I was like, I don't want to do that. um, and I thought there was something wrong with me. And now the more I come back home to myself and get to know myself, my own energetic blueprint, and who I'm meant to be in this lifetime, I'm like, oh wait, this is my biggest gift. And I think that the first message that I would love to share to everybody listening is like, just be yourself in whatever way comes most natural to you, because that is your medicine, that is your gift. And usually you'll start to see yourself through the eyes of others. Like, people are gonna point out like, oh, you have this and you're so good at this, at that, and you're gonna be like, oh wait, like, oh, I see it now as a gift rather than something that's wrong with me.
Yeah, beautiful. It's such a simple message, but it's deeply profound and it's really hard to do. I think for a lot of times, especially when we're younger, we don't really know who we are, which is that's granted, and we're trying to figure it out, and we're trying to come back home to self, and it's like, what even is that, And for a lot, at least for me, like I'm thinking about my high school and early colleges experiences. Um, I was finding out, yeah, like what I was good at, what things that I liked, but it was heavily influenced by my peers. For me, it was heavily influenced by my culture and what I was submerged in at that time. So you're also a young adult. And so it's like you're trying to figure it out, but Catalina and I both do deep. I'd say we're good students of deep inner work, healing. We're like constantly like looking inward and finding out more about ourselves, and we're open to those experiences. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The more connected to self you can be, the easier life gets once you get there. Once you're comfortable being authentic in your full authentic self. But can you tell us, like, how do you, if you don't know, like, how do you get there? How do you find yourself again?
All right, that's a beautiful question. It's it's a long journey, and I think finding myself started through very painful experiences at a very young age. I went through abuse, I went through physical, emotional abuse. Growing up, I ended up being in abusive relationships, almost like repeating that pattern. And
Oh,
then
wow.
one day I wake up and I'm like, wait, like I'm not a victim to this. I'm choosing this. And in that moment, I decided to change my life. And it was hard. And for a very long time after leaving that abusive relationship, I had no idea who I was because the only version I knew of myself was the victim, was the girl that was suffering and that was really sad and this really hurt inner child. So it took years. I'm talking 10 plus years of tending to this inner child, of learning to take care of myself, of learning to listen to my needs and my wants, to really get to know myself. I think growing up, I thought that I didn't matter, that I was meant to please everybody around me and make sure they were happy so that I wouldn't be abused. So
Mm,
when I started to create that space and choose me as like, no, I'm the creator and now I can take care of this little girl, I started saying, yes, I matter. And then through that, I started following curiosity. I was really curious about yoga. I was really curious about Buddhism. Since I was like a little girl, I was drawing like Buddhas. I didn't even know what
mm,
the Buddha was, but I loved what it looked like.
wow.
I'm also an artist and I paint. So I was painting it all over the place. I love doing the yin yang. Um, so I started like leaning back into those things that I was doing as a little girl, not even knowing why. And that took me into yoga. That took me into traveling to Thailand and going to the temples
Beautiful.
and meditating and meeting the monks. That led me to becoming a yoga teacher and traveling to Peru, spending 2 years there finding myself. So it's really like a thread that you follow by following your curiosities and by reminding yourself like I matter and like my needs matter and it's safe to be all of me and I deserve to follow the things that matter to me even if the people around me are against it because I faced a lot of pushback. The more I became myself,
Mm,
the more people were like you've changed so much and you lose relationships in that journey. But what I always speak to my clients as well is like just trust yourself because the more you are yourself, the more you'll meet the people who will love you for being all of you. Like you don't have to compartmentalize yourself to to fit in, right? Like once you're all of you, the people you'll meet, they're going to love you for all of it. And to me, like one of the biggest transformations I've seen in coming home to myself is
mm.
the people that continue to come to my life, the love that they meet me with. I'm like, wow, like how are there such incredible people in this world? And then it's like, oh wait, this is just a reflection of who I am being.
Yeah. Wow, that's so beautiful. It's such an act of bravery because when you explained it such in a such beautiful manner. You know, you're finding yourself and you're essentially choosing yourself. There's so many times where I think individuals, young or old or anywhere in between, like we're just doing things to do things and we're not even recognizing, is this actually making me happy? Am I saying no to something internally within inside of me in doing this action? Like we just kind of move with the wind, and you begin to ask those deep reflective questions of like, how can I choose myself time and time again? And yes, of course, our outside circles reflect that, right? And so then our outside world also changes, which can be scary for the ego. But like you said, you're essentially just coming home to self, and the more committed I think you can be on the track of authenticity, the more linear maybe that track to internal happiness will be. But you have to stay committed to the process of change and growth and death of evolving.
Absolutely. And something I'll add in there is something that I faced a lot within myself that maybe people will resonate with is like, I felt like I was being selfish for choosing myself and going on this path of self discovery and setting boundaries and cutting some people off in my life. But it's not selfish because I was actually writing about this today. Like, the more you choose yourself, the more you're actually making a difference in the world. Because then people
Mhm.
see you and they're like, oh, wait, like, look at how she's living. And it's almost like it's planting a seed in other people as well. So it's the opposite of selfish because, again, the more you are good within you, the more of yourself you can give to others.
1000%. I agree wholeheartedly. So it is really hard to choose yourself. And I do think that emotional maturity is a big piece of that. I think that when we're younger, we are most definitely trying to please others more than maybe as we grow older and more mature, and just are able to have a chance to just have perspective. But I will say that you've endured such transformational experiences at a very, very young age. Like, first and foremost, the spiritual component where you were drawing Buddhas and things of that sort, like calling you in, that's insane, deeply profound, and that like so connected. I think why my I and many others see you as an old soul is because that level of internal calmness that comes with wisdom, and it's almost like a long life has been lived. That is what gives us perspective. As you grow older, you're able to see like, yeah, at that point in my life that was a really troubling time, or I was really fixated on X thing, but now that I'm older, it's like, yeah, like it was just a part of the moving pieces of life, and it's not so grand. But I feel like you were gifted that insight at a very young age. Would you say the same?
Yes, definitely. And I think a lot of that comes with going through a lot at a young age. And I think many of us go through a lot, and it just makes us grow up faster and see the world
Yeah.
differently. But I'll say, even when I was going through those hard experiences, there was always this wisdom in me. It's so crazy to think back on it. But telling me, like, oh, this is also part of the journey. And this is all
Mm,
leading you somewhere, and it's part of your story, and it's going to make sense. And I knew that from a very young age.
beautiful. So, talking about knowing things from a very young age, you help people now within their businesses, you help people heal, you do beautiful breath work amongst the many other healing modalities. Um, what in entrepreneurship, we know that it's a lot about finding yourself, and you're evolving and growing and you change things to see what aligns with you in that chapter of your life. I would imagine that you always had a calling to help people in some fashion. Can you share with us what that looked like for you in the beginning and how it's transformed to what you do today?
Yeah, definitely. And it takes me back to the inner child again because I always reflect on me being maybe 10 years old. I'm an only
Mm,
child, so I spent a lot of time alone with my stuffed animals, playing, creating in the imagination realms. And I
mm,
remember I would sit all my stuffed animals in a circle around me, and we would have like
Oh,
a sharing moment, and then I would go one by one and have like a one-on-one session and listen to them and then give them advice and take notes and give them like a paper with homework. And it's so
stop
funny how that
it.
translates into the work that I do now, which is coaching, and retreats and holding space. But I had no idea what I was doing. It was just play.
Wow.
And I think that's what led me to entrepreneurship. It always felt like play, it felt like creativity, it felt like self expression, like freedom. And from a very young age, I
Mm,
knew that I didn't fit in the boxes that I was told I should go into, go to school, get a job. I went to school and I was like, no, like I cannot continue this path because I'm not being loyal to my soul and to my inner child and to that calling. So
mm,
entrepreneurship happened quite organically to me. When I was 18, my partner was an entrepreneur and he had a business. And that was my first introduction to it. And I was like, what? People can actually have businesses? Like, this is real. Coming from a
mm,
Latino background, I just, in my reality, that you just had to get a job and follow the structure. So when I saw him doing it, I was so inspired that I also started my own business, and I started with drop shipping. So I had a women's
mm.
clothing store, and I put it out there online on social media, did all the marketing, all the branding. And I
Wow.
remember being at the beach one day and I got my first sale. It was like $50 just came into your bank account. And I was like, what? Like, I'm hanging out at the beach and I'm getting paid? That makes no sense, but I love that. And at the same time,
Mm,
I was on my fitness journey because after coming out of that abusive relationship a couple years before that, I went deep into yoga and into working out and just taking care of myself, my body. And I went
mm.
really deep into fitness, ended up,
That's how I met you, through Kara, right?
yes, yes, yeah,
Yeah,
oh my,
through your fitness. Yes. Wow.
exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I totally forgot that, but yes, that's how we met. I was wondering the other day, how did we meet? And it was
Mm-hmm.
through Cara. Yeah. So I was competing in bodybuilding and, really devoted and committed to this path. And I was just sharing my journey on social media more than anything to hold myself accountable. And people just organically started reaching out and they're like, how are you doing this? Like, how are you so
Mm-hmm.
committed? How are you going to the gym every day? How are you transforming like this? And I was like, I think there's a calling here. Like, I can show you how I'm doing it. And I took on my
Mm-hmm.
first client for like $10 or like something like that a session. And slowly that started growing and more people started coming. And I realized, my own journey with coming back home to myself, to my body, healing my relationship with food. A lot of the women that I was attracting were having that same issue without me even like talking or marketing it. And I was like, oh, okay, this is awesome. Like, I can actually help you because I overcame this. So I did fitness coaching for like 2 to 3 years. And then
Mm-hmm.
organically, as the fitness coaching business grew, I didn't have any mentorship or help at the time. It was just me putting myself out there and trying it out. And I was
Wow.
traveling the world at this point and seeing my clients online. I stopped doing personal training in person. I was just doing it online. And organically, again, people started asking, how are you running a successful business online? And I was like, I can show you. And that led to
Mm-hmm.
my first online business coaching clients. So
Amazing.
that's basically what brought me here, but it's been like a journey of constantly evolving and transforming, and your business evolves and transforms with you.
Yeah, yeah. That's the way that you describe it is exactly how I see you. Like that's how when I see, I mean, I know you personally, but when I see you show up online, that's what it feels like. When you show up on stories and your content, it's like, oh, like Catalina is able to just kind of move through things in her life, and it doesn't matter what the offer is. It looks it and it feels enticing. It feels supportive, and it feels like you would be someone that I could ask questions to and help me get to where you're at. So I could definitely understand how why that was kind of effortless. It's what it sounds like, as you're explaining of you just doing different things, and also just like the reality of like I'm on a beach and I just made $50, like that too. You know what? I'm thinking now it was probably a really a big benefit that you did experience that in your younger years, because we're traditionally taught to go to school, get a degree, have a job, and your path to success was so unlike that. It just, I felt that maybe it opened up your world faster, sooner, of what could be your norm.
Yeah, basically it did. And once I saw what it could be like, it was really hard to go back to what the system was telling me to do.
I bet.
Um,
Yeah, I love also the little. I pictured you and your teddy bears at a circle. Literally, when you said circle teddy bears, I instantly thought of the beautiful flower, like ceremonial circles that you'll have in your retreats. That is instantly what my mind thought of when you said the teddy bear circle, and I was like, wow. Like, talk about inner child healing and staying true to who do you are, who you are. Like, you're literally doing the thing that you once did. And it made me think about me as a child. It's so funny. Like, as I'm talking, I'm like looking at I love doing my nails. It's always been like my top form of self care. I love picking out the designs. I love helping my nail technician like really like figure out how we're gonna make it look even more beautiful. And it's funny because when I was younger, I'm the baby. My mother's one of nine, and my mother is the baby of her sisters. So, and I'm the last baby to be born out of my entire generation of cousins. So when we would go to family parties, I was the youngest, always talking to people, doing the things, and I too used to have like calm energy, and just people would always spill the beans to me. They would tell me about their problems and all the things, and I used to do it over nails. And it's not what I'm doing now, but when you said the teddy bear thing, I was like, well, I am still crazy about my nails, and I am holding space for people, and people do tend to come up to me. So I think it's so, thank you for reminding me of that. I think it's so beautiful how we, the journey of healing, especially nowadays, inner child healing is so popular. And it's wonderful. But it's like, wow, like we've actually come back to self, and that is the goal.
yes, that is the goal. And like something that I always say is the inner child always knows, and she always knew.
Yeah.
Um, and it's about, bringing back that playfulness. Like what were those things that as a little kid brought you into the zone and you were excited to do, and how can you bring that back into your work, whether you run a business or whatever work you do in the world. Bringing back those things from your inner child is how you come back home to yourself. Because when I would hear people say, like, very common in the self-development industry, you just gotta love yourself. I was like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't get it. How do I love myself? And once I started like connecting to this little girl inside of me, I felt this natural drive of like, oh, I want to love her. Like, I want to protect her. And in my own journey, that's how I learned to love myself, by staying true to her.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. The term of like self love, self care, it's like, what does that mean? How do I even do that? People that ask that, and I used to ask that too, it's like, because we're so out of touch with ourselves, it's like, what does it even mean to love myself? Even in you know a little bit about my spiritual journey, like I was called into this, it almost called me, right? And I still feel like I'm a newbie in the spiritual space. I see it as a connection to self. It's like, how deeply connected can I be to my soul at this time? That for me is spirituality. And however that comes about might be different for a lot of people. But when we're on this mission of, or when we're thinking about like, how do I love myself more? It's like, well, you have to know yourself to love yourself, right? When you love somebody else, it's because, let's think about like dating. You begin to pick up all of their gestures and cues because you're like, low key obsessed with them in a healthy, playful way. You're like, oh my God, this person's so great. And, they're doing all these things, and like you're paying attention to them. You're listening and holding space for them because you're intrigued by them. This could be for like even platonic, like a best friend, that you meet. And it's like, yeah, well, do we do that to ourselves? And how that look, you could start it from an adult or wherever you're at right now, but our truest form of self was as a child because there were less biases, less judgments, less perceptions of who we are supposed to be, what our family wants for us, friends, society, culture, all of those things. So inner child healing really is profound because if you can remember, and as we know, when we have trauma, it's sometimes hard to remember, right? But if you spend time nurturing and really sitting still, we can start to remember, like, what did she like or he? What did he or she like? And what was I called to do at this time? And I'll end it with this spiritual piece that you can definitely speak more on. Then we start talking about our soulful callings and what our soul intended to do in our lifetime here in this chapter. And it's like, yeah, well, why did my soul choose me? What did they see in this lifetime that was so intriguing that they were like, I picked this body at this time. I want to do this, and can we remember what that is? So yeah, inner child, spirituality, it's very much intertwined. How has that transformed, benefited you, and what's your perspective on that?
On inner child and spirituality and how it has transformed me.
Yeah.
Well, I think by committing to staying true to myself, and as you spoke on, like staying true to what my soul wanted to be expressed as in this lifetime, it just transformed into creating my business and doing the things that I love to do, like hosting retreats in the Sacred Valley of Peru, co-creating with indigenous wisdom carriers who I care about so much, about this wisdom of the ancestors of the earth, and giving them a voice
Mm,
through my work and being able to be a bridge. And it's brought me
mm,
back to my heart, and through that connection with the heart empowered me to do what I really care about. And I think we all have a specific thing that we really care about, and we've been raised to think that you shouldn't listen to that. You should just focus on
mm,
survival and working hard and until you retire, and then when you retire you can go ahead and listen to your soul and to your heart. But my belief is like, no, if you stay loyal to your soul, the path will always open and it will always become more clear. And something I see a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, and I found in my journey as well, of like beginning to tap into my heart and my soul, was like I didn't know what the full vision would look like. And I thought I was supposed to know that from the very beginning before starting. So it was really overwhelming because I felt all this energy in my heart and my body of like, yes, this is what I want to create. I want to do something good in the world, but
mm,
I don't know how to translate it. And that
mm,
kept me in like that analysis paralysis for a very long time. But what I've learned is the path shows itself with each step you take. You cannot get to the top of the mountain without each step first, just walking one step at a time. And that's something that I wish more entrepreneurs would know, especially the ones who are in their spiritual journey and they want to make sure all the work they do is aligned with their heart and their soul mission. Like we think with the mind that like you're supposed to know what your purpose is and what your medicine is, but it only unfolds as you continue to follow the little hints of intuition, and it's one step at a time.
yeah. Yeah, it's so I was just talking about this to a colleague as well, and it's a perfect message of what you stated from the beginning, which is the key really is listening to your heart throughout every step of the way. And while that might be challenging because you're a lot of the times walking in the unknown, specifically in entrepreneurship, but just in life in general. But yes, a lot of us feel that you have to have a grand vision or everything has to be laid out for us to begin and take the first step. And you know, everyone calls it messy action, but it's really just aligned action. Like if you can find out what is true to your heart and soul, then you're good. I was explaining to a colleague earlier about how I really love the space of business that I'm in right now, and So I began in 2020. So, almost 4 years. Well, no, I just completed 3 years, right? We're going to begin the fourth year. And the way that I think about my mission, my purpose is nowhere near where I was in the beginning of my entrepreneurship. I see my business and I also recognize that I'm a baby in this entrepreneurship world, and even at that, I still feel profound wisdom and growth within the last 3 years. And the difference of like when I first began, it was like, hey, I know that I'm good at helping people. Let me utilize Instagram to have my reach go out further. Like it wasn't, well, let me back it up. I went into psychology and counseling because I knew that I had a natural gift to help people and I also loved science. So I was like, boom, let me just put the two together, and unknowingly that was me following my heart and just taking that next step of, going to school and doing the things. And then, I got introduced to the beautiful world of social media and our beautiful, spiritual mentors and all of that land of opportunity. And I was just taking one step after the next. Okay, I was like, okay, so I can do this to better my business. Okay, cool. I'm learning about this to help put, the one, two, threes. Okay, great. And even through that, there was a lot of confusion, but it was always like what you're saying. It was always what feels good to me at this time? What's lighting me up at this time that's making me really energized to continue this path of the original messaging was for me was to always just help people, right? But I'm now getting more savvy and more knowledgeable on how to do that better from a more strategic side or more masculine side, but it's still aligned to I want to help people and this is my gift and this is how I want to do it. So I think what you said was it was a good circle because it's at the end of the day, we're still listening to our heart's desires. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely makes sense. And like, I just want to reflect back because I've seen you transform over the years. And I remember, I think the first time we met in person, you were actually pregnant.
I was.
And that was
Yeah.
that was like such a pivot in your journey, and being able to watch you gracefully pivot your brand and your business as you continue to transform as a human is just an example of what this kind of entrepreneurship looks like, which is like your business gets to evolve with you, and where you're at now might not look the same as it looks 5 years from now. And I used to get really caught up in like the 5 year vision plan because I was like, I don't know where the fuck I want to be in 5 years, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
of course, we kind of have an idea of like our bigger life goals and where we want to take our life. But when you're in this path of self discovery and inner work, you're constantly shedding layers and becoming a different version of yourself, whether it's going through the
Mm-hmm.
motherhood journey or any
Mm-hmm.
other journey that life might take you. Um, I used to really struggle like bridging both together. And I thought I had to stick to what I was already doing in order to keep my business alive. But actually what keeps it alive, which is what you said, is following what excites you and what's alive for you in each and every moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's not easy, right? Like, entrepreneurship is very, I mean, I see it goes hand in hand with life. Like you really are discovering yourself. And it's kind of just like, how conscious are you to what's actually happening internally? How conscious are you are you taking, and I'm not shaming anyone, but like, are you taking the easier way out, which is to have your eyes closed and just following a path because it's there for you versus like you really sitting with yourself and asking like, am I happy at this time? What do I want my impact to be at this time? And even that word impact, like literally when I began the business, it was just like, oh, I don't know. Like I know that I can help people and like let's just start there. Right. And now that I became a mother, it was like, oh, Spirit told me to do a motherhood program. And in the beginning, I was like, I'm good off that. It's not my world. And then little by little, it was like, wait a second, like you have all this knowledge from your past experiences of work and also just ancestral knowledge of this is what's supposed to be happening at this time. This is how to have more grace in motherhood. This is how to be more present. And essentially, even though it had the whole motherhood title and cap on it, I'm still helping people do the same thing. Look inward, find connection to self. It's just that I'm in one leg of my business, I'm helping moms. And what I can say is that I struggle with the what am I doing? Like, am I going too far left? Like, are people following what's happening at this time? Like, I feel like I'm switching models every 2 seconds, but if we really look at the depth, it's like, no, you're not. You're still helping people. You're just evolving in your life, and it's bringing up new opportunities for you to bridge, to differ, to. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as long as we're consistent to what lights me up at this time, and what is my true calling in this present moment of my life.
Exactly. And I think that just goes back to growth is not linear. It's circular. If you look at nature, at the seasons in nature, at how things rise and fall and their birth and they died, everything is a cycle and it's circular. And when we start seeing ourselves, our journeys, and our businesses in that way, we realize that there's a season for everything and that everything is constantly transforming. And I will say, yeah, entrepreneurship is not easy. I always say it. It's the path for the brave, for the courageous. It's freaking hard. And
Mm,
it gets really glorified and it is amazing. It's so
yeah.
amazing to have the freedom to do it and to be creatively expressed and connected to your inner child and to help people and make a difference. Like, to me, like, yeah, this is my dream work, this is my soul's work, and it tests me every single day, and it makes me, as you
Mhm,
said, like, look at myself and look at the mirror and look
mhm.
at all the shadows that might come up through the act of putting yourself out there and, creating something, whether you're creating a retreat, an online program, a course, whatever you're creating. It's so vulnerable because it's an
Yeah.
expression of you that you're putting
Mhm.
out into the world, not knowing how the world is going to react. And I remember the first time I launched a group program in 2019, I was so scared, and I was like, I'm just going to put it out there and see what happens. Nobody signed up, not a single person. And I wanted to go and hide under a rock and never come back and just take a different route. I was like, okay, this entrepreneurship thing is not for me. That was so hard and so scary. But something
Mm.
told me to keep going. And then I
Yeah.
launched the group program again, maybe 5 months later, and 10 people got in. And it just took off.
Wow. That's
So
big. That's a big number for, yeah, that's a big turnaround.
it was like like, it a big transformation, a big turnaround. But what it showed me is like, have faith and just like trust the process, because
Yeah.
the thing is, entrepreneurs, we are solution magicians, and we have to learn to not look at the success or lack of success in our business as making it mean something about us, because
Mm.
all it is an invitation to curiosity.
Yeah.
So that moment where, it was really hard, I put out the program, nobody signed up. I had the opportunity to look at what wasn't working and what I could do differently. And with that, I
Mm.
was able to adjust and make changes and hire help. And the second time around, it worked and it clicked. And it just continues to go like that. Like, I think we expect the path to be linear and to continuously become more and more successful and for the numbers to grow and grow and grow. And yes,
Yeah.
that can happen. But again, growth happens in circles. So after that big launch, I had some moments where, again, I was like, what am I doing? And why
Yeah.
isn't it working? And it's just
Hmm.
a constant journey of self discovery, peeling the layers, and getting curious and learning.
Yeah. I think I resonate so much with what you're saying. And like I said, in this phase of my life in entrepreneurship, I'm so much more patient. Before it was like just about sales. It was just about like, okay, how many times can I launch? And it was just, it was I had to pay my bills. I had to live, so it was just like, okay, this is what's going to generate money. And we're of course still doing that, but I'm so much more detached at this point. Like, I'm interested in like numbers and data and, well, what's working, what's actually resonating with people, what's helping the, like, how do I say, when you said that this, I love the analogy of this circle, like growth comes in circles, and how I'm envisioning it, it's like the circle that it's like rising, right? So as you rise, you have greater perspective. In the beginning, when you're just circling down here, it's like, for me, it was like sales, like, how can I get more sales? Like, and then it's like, okay, what's actually making me happy? What do I want to spend my time when I'm not working? What kind of impact, what kind of long lasting impact do I want my clients to have? Like, you begin thinking about different things, and I'm now, like, you, this curiosity factor, I'm very much in this very playful state in my business. And I guess that has to have come from, I feel safe in my business, even though
Mm.
things are not perfect. There's a lot of room for growth and for things to be fixed and worked on. But it's like, I trust me and I trust life and universe. Like, even through all the ups and downs, we're still here and we're still kicking and thriving to an extent. There's two sides of the coin. Entrepreneurship is not always glamorous. There's many tears, there's many times of self doubt, but it's also amazing. It's so much growth and evolvement. And yeah, so back to my point, I'm in a space now where I'm like, just very, I don't, it's almost like my business is here, and I used to be so like this is mine, like it has to work, and so attached. And now it's like, oh, here's my business, like, and it's kind of like 2 feet away from me, and it's like, there you are. This is what you're doing. How can I input more into this? How can I help this grow? Almost like a baby, literally like a baby. It's like they're beginning to walk now. They can kind of do this on their own. How can I help from a more reach at point at this time in our business life? So I love what you said about growth, and it's still about us, right? It's just like, I hope that makes sense. I feel like I kind of went everywhere with that, but I think, does that resonate?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Okay, girly. I feel like we've talked so much about different things, and it's been so. I mean, for me, what's funny? I'm interviewing you, but I feel like you always bring out so much in me, and that's a part of your magic too, which I love. So, intuitively, girly, or whatever's on your heart, I feel that the people that maybe are tapping into this episode, they're probably going through something, a little challenging right now. Maybe trying to find themselves, maybe trying to begin a business. Maybe wondering what's their calling. What piece of advice would you give them at this time?
Hmm. I would say there's no rush. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to have it all figured out. And there's also so much pressure from the outside world of like, you have to get it now and get it quick. But your purpose is not something that can be just figured out in one day. And I would say if you're in a place where you're feeling a little bit lost and maybe like your path is changing, but you're not really clear on what's the next step. Like, we're in winter as we're recording this right now. It's a perfect time to just rest, to create space, to nourish yourself, and to give yourself permission to not know. I think
Yeah.
there are times to make decisions and there are times to be really clear and go, just as there are times to not have any answers and be in the unknown and be in that space of like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And that's okay. And
Mm.
releasing the shame of not having it all figured out, because really, I don't think any of us has it all figured out. We're just like trying things and playing around, but everybody's going through their own experience, and it's so easy, especially through social media, to put people on pedestals and think that they have it all together and their life is perfect. But we're all moving through our own challenges and learning lessons. That's part of our soul journey that we all have to go through. Nobody's skipping the lessons. So with that
Mm.
being said, like, give yourself grace to be in that space, because I think the moment we release that pressure, it's almost like our channels begin to open when we just give ourselves permission to not know and maybe play. Maybe for you, it's right now following that curiosity of your inner child, maybe taking a pottery class or following a new
Mhm.
recipe or starting a painting, and through that creating space for the next step to show up, and knowing that that aligned step will come as an intuitive hit, and it's going to feel exciting,
Mhm.
and giving yourself permission to jump into those things that feel exciting, even if you don't know where they're going to lead you.
So profound. I feel like just hearing that, it just feels very calming. And I hope our listeners feel that way too. The message that I got from your piece of advice was to befriend the unknown. Like to
Mm.
really, and that takes time, but to really learn how to become comfortable with not knowing. Right. Like I know for me in my journey, that was very anxious filled of like, what do you mean? Like, I have to know the next step, you know? And I would like grind my gears until I could figure it out. And then just over time within entrepreneurship, it's like this happens a lot. This happens a lot. And you always figure it out when we stop. When we stop trying to figure it out, that's when the answer comes. Right. So I love, you're someone who exemplifies artistry so beautifully. Um, when I see you, like on your stories and just knowing you, like you're someone who is so, for me, so in touch with artistry, and just being still. And I think I tend to attract a lot of people who were like me. And honestly, I'm still this way in many ways of like this very logical kind of mindset of like, it's very rigid. And there wasn't a lot of space for play and creativity and art. I'll actually share this, insight. My mother's a wonderful artist. She draws, she paints, she's an artist. She's free flowing, and I never felt that I had my own sense of artistry. It was always like my mom's really good at art and I can just copy what she does. I've always been a really good, I don't want to say imitator, but I've always been very coachable. Like my MO for life has always been like, tell me how to do it and I can do it. That's why I love being in sports. I loved playing softball and basketball and gymnastics. Like it was just like, oh, you want me to put my hand here and do this? Done. And I would thrive off of that. But even so, in artistry, I would have to follow my mom because, like in my eyes, she was an artist, and I was just, putting it together or following her. And so, in my business, was actually the first time that I began to realize I am creating offers. The Conscious Motherhood Circle, any other program that I've done in the past, like these, and it is very vulnerable because it is my artwork. These are my ideas. I'm putting all of these things together in modalities and theories and different pillars. Like I am the mastermind behind these creations as you are for your business and every other entrepreneur. And it may not look like the art that I think initially of like paintbrush and like pen and paper, but like I am this is indeed artistry, and for me, even recognizing that has allowed me then to be more open and playful to like coloring or designing or building. And I'm still so masculine to the core, that it doesn't have to look any one way. But artistry can be found in many, many things. So I think that's beautiful as well to give people the full spectrum. And I think, like I said prior, girly, you just exemplify it so, so well and in a very wholesome manner. I want to open up the conversation about real and rawness, about like what's happening within us at this time, even though we kind of been already doing that. But can you share with our listeners, girly, anything that has caused you a crossroad, an adversity, um, moments of discomfort in your recent journeys of life, entrepreneurship, anything really, that shows us that, like, hey, we're doing the damn thing. And we're also, real people, also still going through our own inner works, always evolving. What's been showing up for you lately?
I love this question. I'll share something that I haven't shared with anybody before that I'm moving through right now, which is,
Mhm.
I've been living nomadically for the last 3 years, and it's become a part of my identity. I can just pick up my one carry-on bag and go wherever I want in the world and explore that place and sit there and enjoy. And it's been amazing and I love it. And I'm feeling a really big calling to set roots. And I'm in that unknown of I have no idea where I want to set roots, but I'm like ready
Mm.
to create a home and a space. So that's definitely bringing up things for me, especially when I'm around friends who have their home and they have it all together, and I'm like, oh, I really want to be that, and also feeling the death of that
Wow.
identity of like this traveler who's you know traveling the
Mm.
world and living the digital nomad lifestyle. Like it's definitely been an identity death that's been coming up maybe for the
Mhm.
past 6 months. And
Oh, wow.
like, yeah, it's been like arising that inner internal conversation of, oh, something's shifting. And
Mm.
by no means am I saying that I'm gonna go get a house tomorrow. I still love to travel and be a nomad, but I am
Yeah.
aware of like, oh, okay, I'm growing in a different way and I'm being asked to change once again.
Mhm.
So that is definitely something that I am sitting with and processing and just calling in more guidance with from my guides in the unknown, because as I told you, like I'm not sure when or how it's going to happen, but the intention is there.
Mm. That's a really big shift, because yeah, you are known for that, and in hindsight, we can separate. Like I always tell my clients, we have three parts of self. We have our inner child, we have our conscious self, the one that's like talking to us right now, and then we have our higher selves. And so I think we just spoke about it. So our conscious self knows that like we're gonna be okay, right, and that this will be hard, but we'll seek through it and eventually you'll find the answer. But I always tell my clients that that part of us, it doesn't matter. Like even if we know things are going to be fine, it's our inner child that holds all reign to all of our emotions, and she's the one who's like, what the f, like, what do you mean, we've been traveling for so long, we love this life, like, she's the one who's like still attached in some ways and bringing up all this fear and discomfort, and just like we're at a crossroads, right? And so I always say, like, it doesn't matter that the logical thing, because your feelings take precedence. They always do, our emotions, and so this is big for you. This is a very big change. What do you feel most unsettled in is it the timing of when this is all going to happen? Is it the decision of what does that look like for you? Is it just the unknown? Does anything specifically come up for you that brings you the most apprehension at this time?
I want to say it's the commitment. When you don't have a home base, it's very freeing in a way. You're in a place until you don't want to be there anymore and you book a flight and you go somewhere else.
Mm.
And the fact of like, okay, I'm going to get a lease and I have to be in this place for at least 1 year. And it's definitely a bigger commitment that's asking me to grow up and step into this next level of adulthood. Um,
Mm.
and and yeah, there's a little bit of fear of like, oh, but do I want to be somewhere for that long? But um, it's become really clear that my priorities are changing, and something that's really important and a core value to me is community and being able to nurture my community. I've met so many great friends and soul family in so many places in the world, but either me or the other person ends up traveling and going to the next country. So it's really hard to keep up with community in person, and all these beautiful things flourish and then you have to go on to the next place. So for me it's like that calling of like setting roots and being there with my soul family and nourishing something for a long period of time.
Mm. Do you think that the fear is in well, like not trusting that wherever you decide to land and put your roots down, even if it's just for a year, because in hindsight, even a year is not that long, but to respect your inner child, for her, it is a long time because you're not used to doing that. So is she maybe on is she not trusting fully that you'll make a good decision for her?
It, I feel like she is just scared because it's something new, and she's is yeah feeling like she's not trusting that, or I'm not trusting that I can handle that amount of responsibility, which of course I can. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just, it feels like a new chapter, and there's always a little bit of fear with that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know you know how to do this work, girly. It feels like she just needs reassurance from you, the adult, that like you got this. We can do this. It's gonna be scary, but it's gonna be great, and I can hold you down, and we're gonna be happy. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Catalina, thank you so, so much. This was such a heartfelt episode. I always, always love conversing with you. I feel like I heal talking through you. I mean that wholeheartedly. I feel like I am more grounded and centered and calm. I'd say before this episode, I was a little like all over the place of like, I got to do these things. And now I feel very like, okay, it'll come because it always does. So thank you, girly. We loved having you. I know our audience did too, and I can't wait for us to reconnect again soon.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me, Julissa. It's always a joy to connect with you. I also receive a lot from you, a lot of groundedness and clarity and safety. So we are mirrors
Mm,
for each other for sure. And
yeah.
yeah, I'm really grateful to have had this conversation with you today.
Likewise. Where can our listeners find you?
I'm hanging out on Instagram. That's the main place. So you guys can follow me. It's Cata Montes. And yeah, I'll be there. I have a couple of things going on. So come and check them out.
Yeah, beautiful. Yes. If you are a new business owner or someone looking to, I would say you can tell it better than I can. But what I perceive of if someone is looking to expand their business, work with you in that fashion, and heal at the same time, you're their go-to person. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I'm working with beginner entrepreneurs. I have a 4 month group program going on right now to help you get your business off the ground. It's called Flourish. And yes, we do the spiritual work and also the strategy. I actually have a business degree, so I don't share that a lot, but people are really impressed when I say that. So I got the strategy and also the spiritual work. And I'm also hosting a retreat in the Sacred Valley of Peru in November. It's ancestral wisdom and heart medicine. So we're going to be working with basically everything we talked about while also connecting with nature and with the elders and just experiencing a totally different world that has changed many lives already.
That's beautiful. You said that's in November.
Yes, November 15th through the 21st.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe my ancestors are calling me back at that time. We shall see.
Mm-hmm. Would love to have you there.
All right, girly. Thank you. Thank you so much for everything. And yes, we will talk soon. Thank you for tuning into Mindset Mastery with Julissa Edwards. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast to receive future episodes packed with valuable insights. Remember to follow us on social media at thehealthy.highperformer for more inspiration, tips, and updates. If you found this episode helpful, we'd appreciate it if you could share it with your network and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us as we continue to empower high performers like you. Until next time, keep mastering your mindset and thriving as a healthy high performer.